In a quiet corner of the world, hidden away between sweeping hills and vast golden fields, there was a small village called Willowbrook. This village was home to around 50 families, each living in harmony with one another. The houses were simple, made of clay and straw, their walls painted in bright colors that reflected the vibrant spirit of the villagers. Flower gardens filled with sunflowers and daisies lined the pathways, greeting every passerby with a splash of color and sweetness. The people of Willowbrook led lives filled with hard work but also deep-rooted joy. If you enjoy this video, please like the video and subscribe for more. And tell me where you are watching from today. I always find it awesome to see where all my viewers are watching from. Let's get back to the video. Early every morning, they woke to the chirping of birds and the soft glow of the rising sun. Farmers tended to their fields, planting crops like corn and beans, which sustained them through the seasons. Children played in the open spaces, laughing and chasing each other while the elders shared stories on porches, their voices carrying warmth and wisdom. This tight-knit community thrived on cooperation. Neighbors helped one another during harvest season, sharing tools and resources to ensure no one went hungry. They gathered each week for markets where they traded fresh produce, homemade bread, and handmade crafts. It was a place where smiles were shared easily, and kindness flowed like water from a spring. Among these villagers was an elderly woman named Granny May. Known for her silver hair that danced in the breeze and her gentle smile that could brighten even the dullest days, she had lived in Willowbrook all her life. Over the years, Granny May had become something of a legend among her neighbors. She had an extraordinary gift for healing plants, animals, or humans. If someone was unwell or suffering, she would find a way to comfort them. Her garden was filled with herbs known for their healing properties. Granny May spent countless hours tending to her plants while sharing stories about their uses with anyone who stopped by. She welcomed children into her garden on sunny afternoons, teaching them about nature's remedies as they searched for ladybugs or picked wildflowers together. While most villagers felt safe cocooned within their simple, everyday lives, some had begun to harbor worries about the wildlife at the edges of town. Stories circulated about lions roaming just beyond the hills, a fearsome reminder that nature could be both beautiful and dangerous. But Granny May's heart always remained open. She believed that every creature deserved compassion. As twilight painted the sky in shades of orange and purple one autumn evening, a sudden commotion disturbed the usual peace of Willowbrook. As villagers gathered around their evening meals, whispers spread like wildfire. A lioness had collapsed outside the village. A mixture of fear and worry swept through the crowd as they gathered by windows or stepped outside to catch a glimpse. What could this mean? Was it a sign? Did it come close to threaten their well-being? Some ran back into their homes, while others clutched weapons for protection or exchanged fearful glances. Yet amidst all this tension stood Granny May, her heart racing not from fear but from concern for yet another life in trouble. Despite what many thought about wild animals being dangerous intruders, Granny May knew this lioness must be suffering. She had seen enough hardship herself to recognize pain when it appeared before her. It did not matter if it wore fur or carried two legs. How would the situation unfold next? No one could have predicted just how much this day would change not only their lives, but also change Granny May's connection with both the villagers and the lioness that lay helpless nearby. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the village of Willowbrook, a sudden commotion shattered the peaceful evening. The air was filled with an unusual rustling sound, echoing through the quiet streets. It startled the villagers, who had just settled into their evening routines after a long day of work. Children paused mid-play and adults peered cautiously from their doorways, curiosity mixed with a growing sense of dread. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the village. The source of the noise became clear as a lioness, a majestic creature that many had only heard about in whispers, collapsed just outside the village's edge. Her tawny coat, once shimmering under the sun, was now matted and dull. The sight struck fear into the hearts of the villagers. They were used to hearing tales about lions roaming the hills nearby, but had never expected one to come so close. "What is happening?" a woman cried out, clutching her child tightly to her side. The sound of her voice drew more villagers outside, gathering in clusters, their eyes wide with shock and uncertainty. Some whispered nervously among themselves, while others instinctively reached for tools or weapons for protection. Fear rippled through the crowd like a wave, growing stronger with each passing moment. The lioness lay still on the ground, her breathing shallow and labored. Her body was thin and frail. It was clear she had not eaten in days. A sense of urgency filled the air as villagers debated what to do next. "It could be dangerous. We should drive it away," shouted one man, his face pale with fear. Others nodded in agreement, worried about protecting their families. Yet amidst the panic, Granny May stepped forward from the crowd. The elderly woman's heart raced, but her mind was clear. She had always believed that every creature deserved compassion, regardless of its size or strength. "No, we cannot hurt her," she said firmly, raising her voice above the murmurs of fear. "She is suffering." Many turned their heads to look at her, surprised by her courage. Granny May had always been a voice of reason in Willowbrook. But this was no ordinary situation. "We need to help her," she continued, her voice steady yet gentle. "She is not our enemy. She is in pain and needs our kindness." While some villagers hesitated, others began to feel a flicker of hope sparked by Granny May's words. A few brave souls stepped closer to get a better look at the fallen lioness. They could see her ribs showing through her skin, and felt a pang of sympathy for this wild creature that had wandered so far from its home. "What if she attacks us?" one villager whispered anxiously as he clutched his pitchfork tighter. But Granny May shook her head, determined not to let fear take control of their hearts. "Look at her," she urged gently. "She is too weak to harm us." With each passing moment, more villagers began to follow Granny May's lead, stepping cautiously towards the lioness while keeping their distance. A feeling of solidarity began to weave through the group as they realized they shared one common goal: helping this creature in distress. Granny May knelt down at a safe distance from the lioness and spoke softly to her as if she could understand every word. "You poor thing," she murmured, feeling a deep sorrow for the wild animal's plight. "We will help you." Her voice carried warmth and reassurance that seemed to cut through the tension surrounding them. Slowly but surely, curiosity began to replace fear as villagers watched the elderly woman approach with care and concern rather than aggression or judgment. They were witnessing something extraordinary, a moment that would change the course of their lives and teach them about empathy in ways they could never have imagined before this night. Granny May had always been a beloved figure in Willowbrook. With her gentle nature and keen insight, she brought warmth to the hearts of those around her. Every villager knew her not only as the kind old woman with silver hair, but as a source of wisdom who had spent decades nurturing both plants and animals alike. She had a way of making everyone feel special, whether through a comforting word or a basket filled with freshly baked bread. Nestled among her herbal plants and climbing vines was Granny May's garden, a magical space that seemed to hum with life. Colorful blossoms danced in the wind, and the air was fragrant with the scent of mint, rosemary, and lavender. The garden was like an extension of herself. It flourished under her tender care, just as she tended to the spirits of those who sought her help. Children often flocked to her home after school, eager to learn about the healing powers hidden within leaves and roots. They listened intently as she told stories of nature's wonders and showed them how to identify helpful herbs like chamomile for calming or echinacea for strengthening their bodies. Animals, too, seemed drawn to Granny May. Birds would chirp cheerfully from nearby branches as she worked in her garden, while cats would curl up on her lap when she sat on her worn-out porch swing. Even the shyer creatures felt a pull toward her gentle presence. Squirrels often peeked from behind trees, curious about the woman whose kindness radiated like sunlight on a chilly day. Her ability to connect with animals went far beyond mere affection. It was instinctual, intuitive. Granny May understood their needs without needing words. Many times, injured birds found their way to her door, landing softly with tired wings that needed mending. She would work diligently, bandaging them carefully with soft fabric while soothing their fears, all while explaining this process to children who watched wide-eyed beside her. As she knelt down in her garden one evening before the lioness collapsed outside the village, Granny May reflected on how much joy animals brought into human lives. She believed they possessed remarkable wisdom themselves. By observing them closely and respecting their natural behavior, people could learn valuable lessons about patience and empathy. That belief was what fueled her bravery when stepping forward earlier that night amidst the panic over the lioness's sudden appearance. While many villagers were overtaken by fear, viewing the creature as an intruder, Granny May saw something different. A fellow being who deserved compassion during its darkest hour. In that moment when fear gripped Willowbrook's heart, Granny May recognized an opportunity for connection, not just with the lioness, but also with herself and all of humanity. She remembered countless times when creatures had entrusted themselves to her kindness and care. This lioness needed help just as much as those woodland friends did. Granny May closed her eyes for a breath, grounding herself despite the chaos around her. It was essential to remain calm so that others could feel secure enough to approach this situation differently, embracing empathy rather than running away in terror. Animals are just trying to survive, she whispered softly under her breath as memories of bonding moments filled her mind. The rabbits scurrying through grass after being fed from leftover scraps, or even caring for orphaned fawns that had lost their mothers far too soon. She opened her eyes again at the sound of hushed conversations erupting nearby. A mix of concern, interwoven with skepticism looming in several wary faces, still unsure what direction everything should take next. Granny May took a deep breath and spoke again with confidence, while simultaneously letting warmth radiate from within herself outward, like sunlight piercing through dark clouds. This lioness is not our enemy, but another life deserving our kindness. And as she stood steadfastly beside those initially hesitant villagers watching on nervously, the flicker of understanding began illuminating hearts across Willowbrook. As the villagers gathered around the fallen lioness, a wave of emotions swept through the crowd. Each person reacted differently, reflecting their unique perspectives and experiences with wildlife. While some were paralyzed by fear, others felt a mix of concern and curiosity. At the front of the group stood Tom, a farmer known for his protective instincts. His brow furrowed and his hands trembled slightly as he gripped the handle of his pitchfork. "This is dangerous," he exclaimed, his voice rising above the murmurs. "What if she attacks? We can't let her near our homes or our children." The fear in his eyes mirrored that of several others who shared tales of lions lurking in the shadows, tales that had been ingrained in their minds since childhood. For Tom, this lioness was not just an animal, but a threat to everything he held dear. Nearby, Sarah, a mother of 3, stood clutching her youngest child tightly. Her heart raced as she scanned the scene, torn between her instinct to protect her family and her compassion for the suffering creature before them. But what if she's hurt? What if she needs help? She whispered to her husband, her voice shaky with uncertainty. She remembered stories of how animals had been misunderstood and how many had suffered because people acted out of fear rather than kindness. As discussions swirled around them, some villagers voiced their opinions with confidence, while others remained silent, unsure of what to think. A few younger villagers, emboldened by Granny May's gentle approach, began to step closer to the lioness. "Look at her. She's not attacking. She's just lying there," called out Daniel, a teenager with a heart for animals. He had spent countless afternoons volunteering at local shelters and knew what it meant for creatures to be in pain. "We should do something. She looks sick." However, not everyone agreed with him. Old Mr. Henderson, who had lived in Willowbrook longer than most could remember, shook his head gravely as he watched from a distance. "You young folks don't understand. Nature has its ways. We should leave it alone." His voice held years of experience with both animals and life's harsh realities. He believed that wild creatures belonged in the wild, far from human interference, and feared that helping could lead to unforeseen consequences. Just then, Granny May's calm voice broke through the chaos once more. "This lioness is suffering," she reminded them gently but firmly. "We have an opportunity here to show kindness instead of fear." Her words seemed to resonate with some villagers who began to look at the lioness differently. A soft murmur spread through the crowd as they exchanged glances filled with doubt, but also an emerging sense of hope. Some nodded slowly, recalling moments when they had shown compassion toward other beings, whether it was helping an injured bird or rescuing a lost puppy. As tension hung thick in the air like storm clouds above, emotions shifted from fear toward contemplation. Villagers started voicing their own memories about caring for animals and learning to appreciate their struggles rather than viewing them solely as threats. "Maybe we can help her." Sarah spoke up again, her voice gaining strength as she caught Granny May's eye across the crowd. "What if we brought her food? If she's starving?" Her suggestion sparked a glimmer of resolve among those who felt moved by compassion. Granny May smiled softly at Sarah's words and encouraged those around her to share similar thoughts on how they might assist this creature in need, rather than shunning it out of fear. Slowly but surely, more villagers began stepping away from their initial instincts and toward understanding that sometimes kindness could bridge even the widest gaps between humans and nature's wild beings. With each passing moment, hearts softened further as they began recognizing this lioness not merely as a threat, but as another living creature deserving care. A lesson that would ripple through Willowbrook long after this night. As tension hung in the air, Granny May felt a fire igniting within her. The fear radiating from the villagers was palpable, but her heart knew what needed to be done. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the belief that compassion could conquer fear. With each step she took toward the lioness, she felt a mix of trepidation and unwavering determination. "Stay back!" shouted Tom again, his eyes wide with alarm as he tried to grab hold of Granny May's arm. "You can't just walk up to her. It's too risky." His protective instincts kicked in once more, fueled by the stories he had heard throughout his life about wild animals attacking when threatened. Granny May turned to him, her gaze steady and filled with kindness. "Tom," she said softly, "facing fear with kindness is our best chance." Her voice was calm but firm, and for a brief moment, it paused the panic swirling around them. The lioness lay on the ground, her breathing uneven and labored as she struggled to find comfort in her own body. In that moment of vulnerability, Granny May saw not a ferocious beast, but a creature lost and desperate for help, just like any other living being that felt pain. She understood that this lioness was not here to attack. It was merely trying to survive. With every few steps she took closer, Granny May felt the eyes of the villagers on her, some filled with skepticism and others brimming with admiration for her bravery. She could sense their uncertainty but remained focused on the lioness. Knowing that instinct often drove creatures to react defensively when frightened, she lowered herself slowly onto her knees as she approached. "Don't be afraid," she murmured softly to the lioness, her voice gentle and soothing like a lullaby drifting through the night air. "I'm here to help you." Her words were meant for both the lioness and those who watched from afar. As she knelt, just a few feet away from the fallen animal, Granny May's heart raced not from fear, but from an overwhelming desire to provide comfort in this creature's darkest hour. She reached into her pocket and pulled out some herbs, a blend known for calming nerves, a small offering she hoped would ease both their souls. The villagers looked on in disbelief as they witnessed Granny May's act of courage unfold before them. "What is she doing?" someone whispered nervously, while another held their breath in anticipation of what might happen next. Ignoring their doubts, Granny May continued to speak calmly, while extending her hand toward the lioness's nose, allowing it time to become familiar with her presence before making contact. Slowly, carefully, she offered a piece of dried meat from her pocket. A humble gesture meant not just as food, but as an invitation for trust. The lioness lifted its head slightly at the scent of food mixed with Granny May's comforting aura. For a brief moment, their eyes locked, two souls connecting across the divide of species and circumstance. This was no longer just about survival, it was about understanding one another's pain. As more villagers began stepping closer out of curiosity rather than fear, they witnessed something extraordinary. An unspoken bond formed between an elderly woman and a wild creature struggling against adversity. The tension began to dissolve like mist under sunlight as hope flickered in many hearts around them. One by one, villagers started shifting their perspectives. Some even began murmuring among themselves about how they could contribute to helping this noble animal instead of fearing it. They recalled their own experiences of kindness and how sometimes care led to healing, not just for animals, but also within themselves. Granny May continued providing gentle encouragement while feeding bits of food to the lioness, all while ensuring that everyone around understood their role in this act of compassion. She turned back toward Tom and others who had initially been hesitant. "We can be stronger together if we choose love over fear." At that moment, Granny May became more than just an elderly woman known for her wisdom. She emerged as a beacon illuminating hope in darkness, a reminder that even amidst chaos, compassion could triumph over fear and misunderstanding. As Granny May knelt beside the fallen lioness, she moved slowly and deliberately, her heart filled with compassion and a deep desire to help. She understood that the lioness was in a vulnerable state, and sudden movements could startle her or provoke a defensive reaction. Taking a moment to calm her own nerves, Granny May focused on the creature before her. The lioness lay on her side, her tawny fur matted and dull under the fading light of dusk. Granny May took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air fill her lungs as she absorbed the sight of the majestic animal. She had seen many creatures in need throughout her life, but this encounter felt different. It was urgent and required careful attention. With gentle hands, she began to assess the lioness's condition. First, she checked for any visible injuries. Granny May carefully ran her fingers along the lioness's legs, looking for cuts or bruises that might indicate a struggle. As she examined the paws, she noted how thin they felt, each bone more pronounced than it should be. The lioness's ribs protruded sharply beneath her skin, a clear sign that she had not eaten in days, if not longer. "Poor girl," Granny May murmured softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're so hungry." She could see the distress in the lioness's eyes, fear mixed with desperation, as they flicked toward her hand when she reached for the dried meat. It was a cry for help that resonated deeply within Granny May's heart. Moving cautiously, she assessed the lioness from head to tail. Her eyes softened as she noticed the wild creature's gaze, holding a flicker of hope amid its suffering. The lioness's breathing was shallow and labored. It was clear that malnutrition had taken its toll on her body. Once powerful muscles now looked weak and frail, and Granny May felt a surge of urgency to provide relief. As she leaned closer to inspect the lioness's mouth for any signs of dental issues or pain that could affect feeding, Granny May spoke soothingly. "You're going to be okay. I'm here to help you," she promised softly, hoping her words would comfort both the animal and herself. The villagers began to watch closely as Granny May worked with care and tenderness. Some had stepped back out of fear initially, but were now captivated by this gentle interaction unfolding before them. They saw how slowly Granny May approached each step of the assessment, how she treated the lioness not as a threat, but as a fellow being deserving of kindness. After ensuring there were no immediate injuries to tend to, Granny May took another look at the lioness's overall body condition. Her coat was dull and lifeless, without its usual sheen, further indicating an absence of nutrition and care. "You must have been through so much," she said softly, while reaching into her pocket again for more food. With every piece of dried meat she offered, Granny May watched as hesitation melted away from the lioness's eyes and was replaced by curiosity and trust. It was as if their connection deepened with each morsel shared between them, both aware that survival depended on understanding one another's needs. As more villagers observed this tender scene unfold before them, they began murmuring among themselves about what they could do to help, not just the lioness, but also support Granny May in her noble efforts. The initial fear that had gripped their hearts started loosening its hold as they recognized something profound happening before their eyes. Granny May continued assessing the situation while feeding bits of food to the lioness gently. She ensured that every movement remained slow and deliberate so as not to frighten her further. With each bite taken from trembling jaws came renewed hope, not only for the starving creature, but for all watching who began to see beyond their fears into a realm filled with empathy. In that moment of quiet connection between an elderly woman and a wild creature, wisdom blossomed amidst uncertainty, a reminder that even in times of distress, compassion can bridge divides and foster healing where it is most needed. As Granny May continued to feed the lioness, she felt a growing sense of urgency. The creature needed more than the small bits of dried meat she had on hand. It needed a proper meal to regain its strength. She glanced around at the gathering villagers, whose faces were now filled with curiosity and concern rather than fear. An idea sparked in her mind. If they were willing to help one another, they could do something meaningful together. "Everyone," she called out gently but firmly, her voice cutting through the murmurs that had risen among the crowd. "This lioness needs our help, and I can't do this alone. We must gather more food for her." Her eyes scanned the villagers, seeking those who might be willing to assist her in this important task. Tom, who had been standing at the edge of the crowd with his arms crossed, hesitated before speaking. "What can we possibly do?" It's a wild animal. Why should we give it food? His voice still held traces of fear, but was softening as he considered Granny May's plea. Granny May stepped closer, her gaze steady and kind. Because even a wild animal deserves kindness in desperate times, she replied softly. Remember that compassion is what connects us all. This lioness is suffering right now. If we can help save her life, it could also change how we view nature and ourselves. Around her, some villagers began nodding thoughtfully, realizing that this was a moment that could transform their community's relationship with wildlife. Sarah, who had been watching closely with her children by her side, stepped forward. I have some leftover meat in my home from our last harvest, she said with determination in her voice. I can get that right away. Encouraged by Sarah's willingness to contribute, a few others chimed in as well. Daniel, a teenager who had previously shown interest in helping, called out enthusiastically, I can run to my house too. My family has some old scraps we can bring back. With newfound energy surging through them, more villagers began moving swiftly toward their homes. Granny May smiled warmly at Sarah and Daniel as they dashed off to gather food, feeling thankful for their quick response. The spirit of cooperation was beginning to bloom among the villagers, a transformation sparked by their shared concern for the lioness. As moments passed, other villagers joined in too, bringing fruits, vegetables from their gardens, and any leftover meat they could spare. Granny May returned her attention to the lioness while waiting for their return. She continued speaking softly to comfort the creature and soothe its anxiety. Don't worry, she whispered gently as she stroked the lioness's fur. Help is on its way. The lioness seemed to respond to Granny May's soothing presence. Its breathing softened slightly as it lay there on the ground. When the first few villagers returned with offerings in hand, Granny May felt a wave of relief wash over her. They placed baskets filled with food near the lioness and watched intently as Granny May carefully offered more nourishment to the weak creature. With each piece of food given and every encouraging word spoken by Granny May, hope surged within both the lioness and those gathered around her. The atmosphere shifted from one of uncertainty to collaboration, a testament to what compassion can achieve when hearts unite for a common cause. As more food arrived from various directions, including carrots and herbs brought forward by eager children, the villagers began sharing stories among themselves about their own experiences with animals and nature. Laughter mingled with whispers of kindness as they recalled moments of care that had previously forged bonds between them. Granny May directed everyone's efforts as they worked together. She guided them on how best to feed and care for the lioness, while ensuring they stayed calm and gentle in their approach. In that moment of unity, around a creature in distress emerged an understanding, a lesson about empathy that radiated beyond just saving one animal's life. It was about discovering how interconnected all lives truly are. And as night descended over Willowbrook like a warm blanket enveloping them all together, each villager felt transformed by this powerful experience. As the villagers returned with baskets overflowing with food for the lioness, a hush fell over the group. Each person felt a mix of fear and hope as they gathered around the fallen creature. The air was thick with anticipation, and everyone held their breath, wondering if this act of kindness could truly make a difference for such a wild animal. Granny May knelt beside the lioness, her heart racing as she prepared to feed her. She selected a piece of meat from one of the baskets, a generous portion that might bring nourishment back to the weakened creature. Holding it gently in her hands, she turned to the gathered crowd and said, "Let's do this together, one step at a time." With each slow movement, Granny May demonstrated how to approach carefully. She raised her hand slowly, offering the food to the lioness while whispering calming words of reassurance. "You're safe now. Help is here," she murmured softly. The lioness turned her head slightly, cautious yet curious, sensing that something had changed in her surroundings. The villagers watched in silence, their hearts pounding as Granny May extended her hand closer to the lioness's nose. There was tension in the air, fear mingled with hope, as everyone held on to the belief that this moment might lead to healing for both lioness and community alike. The lioness hesitated for a moment, sniffing at the offered food before gently nibbling at it. Granny May's heart soared as she felt the warmth of connection growing between them, a shared understanding that transcended species boundaries. It was a tender moment filled with fragile trust. Seeing this wild creature begin to eat stirred something profound within each villager present. "Look," whispered one excited child to his mother, pointing at the small signs of life returning to the lioness's demeanor. Relief washed over those watching, now that they witnessed an interaction fueled by compassion rather than fear. Granny May continued feeding small portions while encouraging others around her to join in. "If you have food left over from your homes, offer it as well," she prompted warmly, gesturing for some of them to approach cautiously and contribute their offerings. Tom finally stepped forward, still slightly apprehensive, but fueled by Granny May's unwavering conviction. He reached into his basket and pulled out some fresh vegetables, a collection he never thought he'd be bringing forth for a lioness, but was compelled by an urge to help create change. Others followed suit, taking turns providing their contributions until a variety of food lay scattered around. A colorful feast fit for a queen of the jungle. The environment transformed. Fear seemed less daunting when faced with collective kindness. As more food disappeared into the lioness's mouth, villagers found themselves absorbed in this extraordinary encounter, their hearts softening further each time they offered more nourishment. They shared stories about how animals had touched their lives while reflected on their newfound connection with nature. With every bite taken by the starving creature came new hope, a reminder that even in desperate times, there is room for grace and compassion among beings who coexist within this world. The sun dipped lower on the horizon as night began casting shadows across Willowbrook. But rather than darkening hearts or creating distance between them, it brought warmth. A shared understanding stirred by compassion for a wild animal seeking refuge amidst human struggles. Granny May beamed at those around her, while watching intently as trust bloomed between them all. People who once feared this creature now stood united in purpose, ready to embrace not only life, but empathy itself. It was a moment they would remember forever, not just for saving one lioness's life, but also as an awakening toward discovering kindness within themselves. As the days passed in Willowbrook, a remarkable transformation unfolded for both the lioness and Granny May. The bond between them deepened with each passing moment, creating a connection that touched not only their lives, but also the hearts of everyone in the village. Initially, the lioness had been wary, her instincts telling her to be cautious around humans. But thanks to Granny May's gentle approach and soothing presence, the lioness began to trust her. Each morning, Granny May would arrive with fresh food, bringing along not just nourishment, but also encouragement and comfort. She spoke softly to the lioness, sharing stories of her own life and the importance of compassion, a language that transcended words. One bright morning, as Granny May approached with a basket full of meat and fruits, she noticed the lioness stirring from her rest. The creature lifted her head slowly, eyeing Granny May with curiosity rather than fear. It was a small but significant shift. The lioness was beginning to understand that this elderly woman meant no harm. "Good morning, my friend," Granny May greeted warmly, kneeling down as she presented the food. "I've brought you something special today." The lioness hesitated for a moment before inching closer, drawn by both hunger and the familiar voice that had become so comforting. As Granny May placed the food on the ground, she took a moment to observe the lioness closely. The once dull coat was starting to regain some luster. She looked healthier each day, filling out from her previously emaciated state. It filled Granny May's heart with joy to see this recovery taking place right before her eyes. Over time, moments of connection blossomed between them. One afternoon, after finishing her meal, the lioness lay down comfortably near Granny May as she sat on the grass, enjoying the warmth of the sun. To everyone's amazement, she let out a low rumble. A sound they learned was a sign of relaxation and contentment. Several villagers who happened to walk by stopped and stared in disbelief. They never imagined witnessing such a scene unfold. As word spread through Willowbrook about this growing bond, more villagers began to visit Granny May and the lioness. They came not only to see the remarkable friendship blossoming, but also to participate in this unique experience. Children would bring bits of food or flowers from their gardens to offer as gifts to the lioness, while adults shared laughter over how they once feared this majestic beast. Granny May welcomed all who came with open arms, encouraging them to approach slowly and gently. She taught them how to regard animals with respect and understanding. "Every creature has its story," she explained one day as she guided a group of children closer. "Sometimes we just need patience and love to hear it." The lioness started responding positively to these visits. She would rise from her resting place and greet the newcomers with cautious curiosity rather than trepidation. As days turned into weeks, she even allowed some villagers to stroke her fur lightly, an extraordinary leap of trust for a wild animal. This growing bond sparked new conversations among villagers about wildlife and nature's wonders, how they often misunderstood animals driven by fear rather than knowledge. Through their shared experiences with Granny May and the lioness, everyone began recognizing how important it was to coexist with nature harmoniously. Granny May found herself reflecting on how this bond had not only changed the lioness's life, but also reshaped Willowbrook itself. The village spirit grew stronger as people united in kindness toward one another and towards wildlife around them. One evening, as dusk settled over Willowbrook, casting a golden glow across fields and homes alike, Granny May knelt beside the now nourished lioness, who rested beside her again. "Look at how far you've come," she murmured softly while stroking her head affectionately. "You are stronger than ever." In that moment, between an elderly woman and a wild creature, a deeper understanding emerged. One that underscored that compassion knows no bounds and can build bridges between worlds once thought separate. This unexpected friendship would ripple through Willowbrook for years to come. A reminder that sometimes it takes reaching out with kindness for hearts to connect across any divide. As the days turned into weeks, the lioness began to show remarkable signs of recovery under the attentive care of Granny May and the villagers of Willowbrook. With each meal shared and every gentle word spoken, the bond between them deepened, and the lioness started to regain her strength, both physically and emotionally. Every morning, Granny May would rise with the sun, eager to check on her newfound friend. She would gather fresh food from the villagers' offerings, juicy cuts of meat, fruits, and even some vegetables that had been harvested just for her. With each visit, she would prepare a hearty meal for the lioness, ensuring it was both nutritious and appealing. The sound of Granny May's voice became a comforting melody that the lioness recognized as a sign of safety. The transformation was gradual but steady. At first, when she was offered food, the lioness would approach cautiously, her movements still laced with hesitation. However, as time went on, and with Granny May's unwavering patience, she began to trust not only the woman who fed her, but also the kindness radiating from everyone around her. One warm afternoon, as Granny May sat with the lioness at her side in the lush grass outside Willowbrook, she noticed something magical happening. The lioness lay stretched out beside her, no longer tense, but relaxed. Her coat had started to regain its sheen. The once dull fur sparkled in the sunlight as it filled out with health. It was an encouraging sight that brought tears of joy to Granny May's eyes. "Look at you," she said softly while stroking the lioness's head gently. "You're becoming stronger every day." The lioness turned her head slightly towards Granny May's hand, a small gesture that seemed to express gratitude and acknowledgement. As more villagers joined in these daily feeding sessions, they too began to notice changes in the lioness's demeanor. Children approached more closely, their voices filled with excitement rather than fear as they laughed while tossing small bits of food near her. The once distant roars of apprehension transformed into giggles and cheers as they celebrated how far the creature had come. One day, while children played nearby under Granny May's watchful eye, a small girl named Lily bravely approached to offer a piece of fruit. Slowly inching forward and heart pounding with anticipation, she held out a slice of ripe watermelon. The lioness tilted her head curiously before licking it gently, the sweetness of kindness blossoming across her face. The scene was heartwarming. Parents looked on proudly as they witnessed their children learning lessons about compassion and empathy firsthand. They recalled moments when they too had felt afraid and how this journey had changed their understanding of wildlife forever. The support for Granny May's efforts grew stronger as many villagers wanted to help further nurture this remarkable animal back to health. People began taking turns caring for the lioness. Some would sit quietly beside her, while others brought toys that made soft noises or even colorful fabrics for her to explore. Gradually, each interaction helped weave a tapestry of trust between this wild creature and those who had once feared her presence. Villagers learned how important it was to respect nature's creatures, not merely viewing them through lenses clouded by fear, but rather embracing moments shared through compassion. By now, it was easy to see that the lioness was no longer just surviving. She was thriving. Her playful spirit began to emerge again as she explored more of her surroundings each day. She no longer lurked in shadows. Instead, she casually roamed within view of Granny May and those who cared deeply for her well-being. As twilight cast its golden light over Willowbrook, one evening after another, nourishing meal together, everyone gathered around. A village united by love for a once starving lioness, now filled with strength and resilience due to their combined efforts. Granny May looked at each smiling face surrounding them, the warmth radiating from their hearts, combining in harmony like notes from a sweet melody, and realized how this journey had transformed not just one life, but many. Those tender moments shared created lasting bonds that would ripple throughout Willowbrook for generations. As the lioness thrived and regained her strength, the villagers of Willowbrook found themselves undergoing a transformation of their own. The experience of caring for this once starving creature had opened their hearts in ways they had never anticipated, teaching them profound lessons about compassion and the interconnectedness of all living beings. In the hard days that followed the lioness's recovery, villagers would often gather to share their thoughts and feelings about what they had witnessed. Many spoke about how their initial fears had been replaced by admiration for Granny May's courage and the lioness's resilience. Tom, who had once been the most apprehensive about the lioness, found himself reflecting deeply on how he had judged the creature solely based on its wild nature. "I thought she was just a dangerous animal," he admitted one afternoon during a community meeting. "But seeing her vulnerable showed me that we all face struggles. It's not just animals. It's us too." These conversations sparked a wave of change throughout Willowbrook. People began to recognize that compassion extended beyond their interactions with just the lioness. It was a lesson in understanding the struggles faced by all creatures in their environment. They started looking at the world around them through new eyes, noticing how wildlife and nature were intricately woven into their daily lives. The children took these lessons to heart, eager to learn more about the animals that surrounded them. They began asking Granny May questions about local wildlife and understanding how each creature played a role in the ecosystem. "What about the rabbits?" one child asked, eyes wide with curiosity. "Do they have stories too?" As Granny May shared tales of different animals, she emphasized the importance of respecting their habitats and recognizing their needs. Inspired by these discussions, villagers took action to protect not only the lioness, but also the other animals in their area. They organized cleanup days to clear litter from nearby forests and streams, understanding that a clean environment was essential for all creatures, wild and domesticated alike. Families began planting more flowers and bushes in their gardens to attract bees and butterflies, creating habitats that supported local wildlife. As the seasons changed, so did the villagers' habits. They became more mindful about their interactions with nature, learning to appreciate the beauty in every creature, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. They realized that every life mattered, and each act of kindness could make a difference in someone else's world. The bond formed through caring for the lioness also fostered a greater sense of community among the villagers themselves. Neighbors who had previously kept to themselves began sharing meals and stories, united by their shared experiences of nurturing and healing this magnificent creature. The village felt more alive with laughter, collaboration, and an undeniable spirit of togetherness. One sunny afternoon, as families gathered for a picnic in the village square, Granny May looked around at the smiling faces and felt her heart swell with pride. Children played games, while adults engaged in lively discussions about local environmental efforts. And at the edge of the gathering area lay the lioness, now fully recovered, watching peacefully under a tree, her presence a symbol of resilience and hope. "Look at how far we've come," Granny May said aloud to those nearby, gesturing toward the lioness lounging comfortably in the shade. "She taught us that kindness has the power to heal, to transform not only those we care for, but ourselves as well." Her words resonated deeply with those assembled. They understood that this newfound compassion had not only strengthened their community, but also connected them more closely to nature's struggles. They promised to carry these lessons forward, ensuring that empathy remained at the heart of all they did. In that moment, it was clear that Willowbrook had evolved into something greater. A community bound together by love for each other, respect for wildlife, and an unwavering commitment to fostering kindness in every aspect of life. The journey with the lioness had become a lasting legacy, a reminder of how compassion could change lives and open hearts to embrace both human connection and nature's intricate beauty. The sun rose high over Willowbrook on a bright morning, casting golden rays across the village as the lioness, now fully recovered, wandered confidently among the familiar grounds she had once approached with caution. Her sleek coat shimmered under the sun, and her playful spirit had returned, filling her with newfound energy and vitality. Granny May watched from her porch, a smile spreading across her face as she observed the lioness frolicking with children who had gathered to play nearby. Laughter echoed through the air as the young ones tossed small sticks and balls, delighted by the lioness's playful leaps and pounces. It was a sight that filled Granny May's heart with joy. Proof that compassion can heal not only an animal, but also an entire community. However, on this particular day, something extraordinary was about to unfold. As the afternoon wore on, the atmosphere shifted when a sudden commotion broke out near the edge of the village. Villagers hurriedly gathered at the sound of frantic voices, their eyes wide with concern. A group of farmers had been out tending to their crops when they discovered that a young child had wandered too close to a steep cliff nearby and had tumbled down. Panic surged through the crowd as people rushed to help. But the steep terrain made it difficult for anyone to descend safely. Granny May's heart raced. She knew they needed someone who could navigate with agility and strength. Someone who could reach the child quickly. As she looked toward the lioness, an idea sparked in her mind. "We need her," Granny May called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. The villagers turned to stare in disbelief. Could this wild creature truly help? Granny May approached the lioness slowly but confidently, calling to her in soothing tones. "Come on, girl. We need your help." The lioness seemed to sense urgency in Granny May's voice as she perked up and trotted over without hesitation. The villagers watched in awe as Granny May gestured toward the cliff's edge, explaining what had happened. It was a leap of faith for them all. Would this lioness act upon their request? They held their breath as Granny May continued coaxing her friend. The lioness paused for just a moment before bounding forward toward the steep terrain with surprising grace and agility. The crowd gasped as she skillfully navigated down the rocky path, her instincts guiding her where humans feared to tread. With each leap closer to where the child lay injured, but conscious at the bottom of the cliff, hope surged within those watching. Granny May prayed silently for both the child's safety and that of her beloved companion. As soon as she reached the frightened child, the lioness paused cautiously beside him. For a moment, it was unclear how this would play out. However, instead of appearing threatening as many might have expected from such a majestic creature, she lowered herself gently onto her belly beside him. The child reached out instinctively, feeling comforted by this unexpected protector. "Stay calm," a villager called from above, as they tried to make their way down safely. "We're coming." But it was clear that time was of the essence. The lioness stayed close to the child, nuzzling him gently while providing warmth and comfort until help arrived. As villagers carefully descended using ropes and harnesses prepared for rescue, they found both child and lioness safe and secure together, a symbol of unity forged in adversity. Once lifted back up to solid ground, cheers erupted among those present. Relief flooded through everyone as they embraced one another in gratitude for both bravery shown by their beloved lioness and quick thinking by Granny May. This act of kindness, the lioness saving a life, transformed how villagers saw not only their wild neighbor, but also themselves. They learned that true courage often comes wrapped in unexpected forms, and that their bond with nature is more profound than they had previously understood. From that day forward, stories circulated through Willowbrook about how compassion can bridge divides between species, and how even those considered wild could show remarkable acts of love and protection when given a chance. Granny May beamed with pride, not just for what they had accomplished together, but for how this journey had shaped hearts within their community forever. The lioness became more than just a symbol of survival. She embodied hope, reminding everyone that kindness can change lives in unimaginable ways. As the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the village of Willowbrook in shades of warm orange and purple. The villagers gathered once more in the community square. The joyful energy that filled the air contrasted with the anxious silence they had once felt when the lioness had first arrived. Now, they stood together, reflecting on the remarkable journey they had experienced alongside their fierce yet gentle neighbor. Granny May took her place at the center of the gathering, her heart swelling with pride as she looked at the faces around her, each one a testament to how a shared act of kindness had transformed their lives. "We have all learned so much during this time," she began, her voice steady but filled with warmth. Tom, who had once feared the lioness the most, spoke up first, his eyes shining with newfound understanding. "I used to think of her as just a wild animal that could hurt us," he admitted, a hint of embarrassment creeping into his tone. "But now I see that we're all capable of fear and vulnerability. When I saw how she responded to your kindness, it opened my eyes to how we should treat not just animals, but each other as well." Nods of agreement rippled through the crowd as more villagers echoed Tom's sentiments. Sarah, the mother who had first brought food to the lioness, added, "I've been telling my children how our lives are connected to all creatures. If we can show compassion to a lioness in need, shouldn't we extend that same care to our neighbors? It makes us stronger as a community." Her words struck a chord in many hearts as parents exchanged glances with their children, hoping that these lessons would linger long after tonight. The children, inspired by their experiences with the lioness, chimed in with excitement. A little boy named Daniel raised his hand eagerly, and we learned how every creature has its own story. The lioness was really scared and alone before. Now she's our friend. Laughter filled the square as a few children mimicked the playful antics of the lioness, illustrating how they perceived her not just as an animal, but as a beloved friend who taught them valuable lessons on courage and companionship. As emotional stories flowed from person to person, Granny May smiled while listening intently. She knew firsthand how transformative this journey had been for the villagers. They offered each other insights about caring for their surroundings and recognizing the struggles faced by wildlife in their environment. Inspired by their bond with the lioness, they began sharing ideas on how to protect local wildlife and enhance their relationship with nature. "Animals rely on us just like we rely on one another," Granny May shared gently. "This has shown us that kindness can create ripples beyond what we can see. We must take care of each other and all living beings." The crowd fell into a reflective silence before bursting into applause, a cheer for not only what they had accomplished together, but for the future they were now ready to embrace. As night settled around them with stars peeking through darkening skies, Granny May encouraged everyone to remember how compassion could steer them toward a brighter path. "Let us make a promise tonight," she said, "to continue nurturing kindness in everything we do, whether it's taking care of one another or showing respect for wildlife and nature." With promises made and hearts intertwined by shared experiences, villagers embraced one another. They understood that this moment would resonate long within Willowbrook, a reminder that true empathy has the power to heal wounds far beyond what any one individual can achieve alone. As families slowly meandered back towards their homes under the nightly sky, small groups continued to discuss plans about future community efforts, cleanups, wildlife preservation initiatives, and projects that would help foster respect for both nature and neighbors alike. The transformative experience with the lioness embodied an enduring lesson: that compassion is a beautiful force that binds lives together in harmony, inspiring future generations to honor every creature's place within this vast world they call home. And forevermore, Willowbrook would celebrate its connection, not just with each other, but with every heartbeat that shared the earth with them.